Welcome. You're listening to Sports Econ 101, the show where we discuss sports topics from a business perspective. I'm your host, Edward Brown, along with my co-host, Vern Glenn of CBS affiliate KPIX-TV in San Francisco, and Russell Jackman. At each commercial break, we're going to ask a sports trivia question. And one more time, the NBA. Mr. Jackman loves NBA questions.
I'm 3-0, or I'm like 5 out of 6, I think.
That's true.
Your questions.
And our special guest today is Jim Kozimer. And Jim, when's the last time you were with us? What, 3-4 years ago? I guess
3-4 years ago, I came in. We had a lot of fun. I was up in your office. It was beautiful.
Right.
It was a wonderful time, and I love the trivia questions. That's why I came back for the trivia.
Right. Yeah, just for that.
Yeah.
All right. When we come back, there's a lot of things to talk about. We're going to talk about Jim, what he's doing nowadays, but a few
What isn't he doing?
What isn't he doing? Yeah.
Holding down a steady job would be the answer. Holding down a steady job is what I'm not able to do, but we'll figure out what I'm doing.
Yeah, because all you guys doing all the Zoom stuff. I mean, right now we're doing Zoom, and that's pretty easy from this end of it, but it's a little different when you have Vern's job and Jim's job.
Yeah.
All right. Talk a little. Arkansas is the latest state to try and pass a bill that would ban transgender athletes from competing in girls' sports.
No.
I don't think they really mind about competing in men's sports, right? They'll let women compete in men's sports if they want, right? In other words, a woman who turns into a man, they'll say, sure, if you can make it, we'll let you compete. But the other way around, not so much, because the DNA is still
I've done stories on that before.
Do you? Okay, we'll definitely talk about that.
I'll relate that during the show.
Okay, and Ben Roethlisberger, he's willing to stay with the Steelers for less money, but the Steelers may want to move on. Then a couple other things we want to talk about. All right, this segment of Sports Econ 101 is sponsored by Pacific Private Money, still providing mortgage investments currently yielding over 7.5%, paid on a monthly basis, secured by real estate. It doesn't get any more conservative than that. Check them out at pacificprivatemoney.com. Stay with us. You're listening to Sports Econ 101, and we're going to be right back. Welcome back to Sports Econ 101. Edward Brown here along with Vern Glenn and Russell Jackman and our special guest, Jim Kozimer. Jim, how are you doing nowadays?
I am doing great. Things are fun. It's a weird time, as Vern would probably tell you, in our industry, to try and maintain some level of normalcy. It's probably true with everyone in everyday life. So while I work with NBC Sports Bay Area in California, we've changed our model of business. And so when there are games, I get a chance to work. When there aren't games, I get on the internet and see if I can find some other work. So I work at NBC Sports. I also work for FS1, where I have a package of Pac-12 basketball games that I do. So I'm able to keep my toe in a little play-by-play. I do some pre- and post-game work. And on the radio, every once in a while, I sneak in. Vern has listened to my radio program every once in a while on the weekends when he's making his breakfast. He sends me pictures of his breakfast that he's making.
Yes.
And we talk about that. So I work for 95.7 The Game on the weekends in the Bay Area, FS1 for some Pac-12 basketball, and NBC Sports, my main employer.
Jim,
so when do you sleep?
Jim, I want to say I was a huge fan of yours on your Sacramento radio when you were on KCK. And I actually called you a number of times. You probably don't remember me at all. Although I gave you the suggestion that you change your show's name to the Co's Nose.
Co's Nose? That's not a bad – you know what? I still need some things I got to do in the future here. So believe me, Russell, I might steal your idea.
No, please. You can't steal something that's being given to you.
Yeah.
So, I would be more than honored. In fact, I think you and I are probably the only two Kings fans in the room. I lived in Sacramento for 8 years, and my first month in Sacramento, the Kings set the record for the most number of road losses, consecutive road losses.
Wow. You're a jinx wherever you go. Look at you.
That was when Danny Ainge had been traded over to the Kings, and every day the headline was another complaint about Danny Ainge about how much he hated Sacramento. Every day he was just like complaining about, why am I here? I hate this team. I hate this city. I hate the color of the uniforms. Literally, just everything that a player could hate about a team, Danny Ainge hated.
And how quickly did he get traded after that, or let go?
Not long.
Yeah.
He was traded over to Portland, I think, before the end of the season.
Because,
Yeah.
I mean, when you look at his background, he went to BYU. That's, Provo's not the biggest city. He's from Salt Lake City. That's not the biggest, most highbrow city in the world. It's a lovely area. But, man, for him to be so vocal about his displeasure with the capital city, well, whatever. You know what? It's funny. He wanted to get traded. He figured out his way to do it. Today, in today's NBA, we see guys who want to get moved. They figure out their way that they're going to get traded.
Yep.
Well, okay, and that brings us to Deshaun Watson. So the Texans are not interested as of today in trading him, and they're not even entertaining any even phone calls or anything. It's not that they're just saying no. They're not even responding back to teams that are showing some interest. I mean, at some point, for now, I mean, at what point do you finally just kind of give in and just go, you got to let this guy have his way out, or else it's going to be a cancer for the whole team?
Well, I think they set their price too high. They put their goals on 2 starting players plus 2 draft picks. And that's just too high a price to pay for. The team that picks him up doesn't know if Watson's going to be any happier with them, in 6 months or a year than he is with Houston.
That could be.
My sense of it is that go ahead, Cozy.
Sure. We haven't heard from you, Vern. I feel bad. We haven't even heard from you. But my view is, if you're an organization, you have new management, he is an elite quarterback in the game. You just don't give those guys up. And as unhappy as he is now, maybe you try to ride it out and see if you can garner favor with the guy. That would be my view. Vern, I don't know if I could give up on a guy as unhappy as he is. I don't think I'd just give him away.
Well, what's going to make him happy? Has he said what's going to make him happy? Because
Well,
J.D.
he's
Watt's
already got
already
a
gone.
contract. I mean, if what's going to make him happy, to get paid on the 1st and the 15th. And he does that when he shows up. If he doesn't want to show up, that's up to him, but he's going to lose out on a lot of money.
Here's my thing.
Go ahead.
My thing is this. I still would like to actually hear from the man on camera, look at me in the eye and go, I don't want to be here. I mean, all we're just hearing is talk from his agent. I guess we perceive that he's unhappy, but
didn't he tweet out some stuff?
I didn't see. Did you see a direct tweet from him?
Yeah, I thought
Cozy,
that,
did you see one?
I did not. I didn't.
Well, I
didn't.
thought that there was some stuff specifically from him, kind of going, kind of very strongly hinting around it. And
I have not seen, heard, read anything directly from him typing something out and hitting send. Okay, I do not want to be here. So again, because if you're new management, you got a lot on the line. You got a lot at stake. I mean, you got a lot of time to sit down with the man directly at the headquarters and talk him into, this is our vision for the team, and we need you running our team. And if he's a true professional, whether he likes it or not, you're going to show up and you're going to be a professional. And as Cozy said, get paid on the 1st and the 15th of every month, especially with the new NFL calendar, which starts in March.
And hopefully get all the other team members rallying around you.
Right.
That's kind of tough when your quarterback says, "I don't want to be here," or
but I mean, but that, geez, what do you have? Do you have him on speed dial, Edward? I mean, you got a text from him saying that? That's my thing. I just want to hear from him.
Me and Deshaun, 2 tin cans and a string. That's how we communicate.
Right. That's just all I'm saying.
There is something interesting in this, and that is Deshaun Watson's view is that he was going to have a say in general manager and head coach. And the definition of that is very interesting because management might say, or ownership might say, well, I'm going to ask you what you want to see. What are the values you want to see in a head coach or a general manager? And to Deshaun Watson and his group, they might think that means names of people. And so I think that there's a crossing of the wires here, Vern, where, a player thinks he's going to get a say in who gets the job. And by the way, getting a say in it doesn't mean that they pick your guy. Yeah. It might just mean that you need to have a suggestion. I think that's one of the reports is that he's quite tweaked, that he doesn't feel he has been as involved in the process. I'm not a believer that players should be involved in it. I don't know, Vern, when the people over at CBS 5 are looking to make a move, do they call you into the office and say, hey, Vern, you've been in the market a long time. What do you think we ought to do about the new VP of sales?
But here's the thing, Cozy. I mean, Deshaun Watson, for as great as he is, he doesn't have Aaron Rodgers' legacy in the league. Now, if you're Aaron Rodgers, I would expect to get a phone call. Hey, what do you think about this guy? But Deshaun Watson, how many years has he got in the league?
He doesn't have the experience yet of
Exactly
all those people. Yeah, that's true. No, very true.
Or the track record. I mean, he did get them deep into the playoffs. Now, listen, I love Deshaun Watson. If the teams I root for had a chance to get him, I'd push all my chips in. So let's not think that we don't think he's a great quarterback. He's a great young quarterback.
Absolutely.
Takes a lot of hits. I'll tell you, the story about Deshaun Watson playing the game, I think it was in Jacksonville, where his lung collapsed. He got hit so hard his lung collapsed, and he couldn't take the team flight home. They had to hire a bus to drive him back to Houston because he couldn't take going into the air in a plane with the air pressure. Yeah. He played the next Sunday, even though he took a bus ride back from Jacksonville, for crying out loud. That tells you about the toughness. So nobody thinks he's not tough and he's not a great young quarterback, but he doesn't have the complete body of work. He's only been in the league for a shorter amount of time than the Rodgers, than the Brady's, than the you can pick your guy. So I think that's what we're talking about.
All right. Okay, guys, we're going to cut to our first commercial break with a trivia question here. And Jim, if you know the answer, don't say anything until we get back from break. Ready? Talking the NBA here. What player spent his entire career with the Pistons, scored over 16,000 points, and recorded over 1,300 steals?
Well, that's a good one.
And I'll tell you, it was not Bill Laimbeer. All right. I don't think he had that many steals. All right. Email Edward at Sports.
Can I ask for a hint?
Not yet. When we get back. All right. Here's our trivia question. What player spent his entire career with the Pistons, scored over 16,000 points, and recorded over 1,300 steals? All right. Email Edward at sportsecon101.com.
I know who it is.
That question. All right. Stay with us. Sports Econ 101 is going to be right back. Well, welcome back to Sports Econ 101. I'm Edward Brown, along with Vern Glenn and Russell Jackman and our special guest, Jim Kozimer. There you go. All right, first trivia question. What player spent his entire career with the Pistons, scored over 16,000 points, and recorded over 1,300 steals? Mr. Jackman, you said you know this.
I believe that it's Dave Bing.
No.
Hold on. Yeah, hold on. That's
Jim Kozimer.
I was going to go Dave Bing, but since you went Dave Bing, I'm trying to think. Did Isaiah play for another team?
Dun, dun, dun.
I think he did.
Isaiah Thomas. Dave Bing it was between Isaiah Thomas and Dave Bing. I can't think of another team that Isaiah played for, so I'm going to go Isaiah Thomas.
Vern, you have a guess?
I too was going to go with number 11, Isaiah Thomas.
Joe Dumars.
Get out of
Joe
here.
Dumars.
Yeah.
No way.
Joe Dumars. Getting back to Dave Bing, I once interviewed Dave Bing in Detroit in a luxury suite during the Giants-Tigers World Series. He was then mayor of Detroit.
Yep.
Wow.
Very nice man.
That's like Kevin Johnson playing for Phoenix and Sacramento, and then becoming the mayor of San Francisco. Sacramento.
Kevin Johnson never played for Sacramento.
Oh, that's right. He just became. I'm sorry. He played for.
He grew up there, but he never actually.
Right.
And he became mayor of Sacramento, but never played there.
In fact, I think if I'm not mistaken, he's one of the few players who could play all 48 minutes of a game. I mean, the guy was.
He could play in overtime back then. He was like a water bug. He had tons of energy.
Yeah. I mean, and in his position too. It's not like he's a center. Pretty amazing.
Little fun fact about Kevin Johnson.
Yeah.
He bought my house in Sacramento.
He
rented.
Yeah, very nice.
He and his new wife rented it first, and then they ended up buying my house in East Sac. Yeah, so he's
Keep
a
that
great,
in mind
great
for your next trivia question.
I know.
Yeah.
And I'll give you a fun fact about Dave Bing. As successful as he was as an NBA player, and he became mayor, as Vern said, he was an ultimately successful businessman who ran a steel mill. And I believe, Vern, was he a billionaire at one point?
Really?
He was very well.
If he wasn't billion with a B, I think he was awfully close.
Yeah, he was a very successful businessman. Really, really successful. The city of Detroit, unfortunately, had a lot of problems at the time that he was trying to come in and be the mayor. But he was a great, great businessman. As great as good old number 21.
Well, I may not be a B or an M, but I'm a T. I'm a thousandaire.
There you go.
Yeah, there we go. Yeah.
Okay.
That would be a really, you know what? That would be a really good story to do a story on ball players, particularly we're doing the story here in the Bay Area. Bay Area ball players who, after the career is over, went into another career, and then were even more successful financially than they were as a ball player.
You know, Jim Otto.
I'd like to know that.
Jim Otto was one. I mean, we're talking old. That's old time school, but you know, he was big in all the Burger King franchises and was on the board of Umpqua Bank, and he was very successful.
What was Joe Morgan? Was he a Hardee's? He was a big there was a fast food chain that he was an owner of. Steve Young is big in the financial industry right now.
Yep.
Actually does a lot of work there. And who was the old tight end that he played with on the same team?
Brent Jones.
Brent Jones. Oh yeah.
He's a billionaire.
Big time venture capitalist. Yep.
Yeah.
And Ronnie Lott's doing all the cars, I think, isn't he?
Well, he co-owned a Toyota dealership in Tracy with Keena Turner.
Nice.
What the status of that is now, I don't know.
But yeah, I think he's still got some in like Redwood City or San Carlos area.
You know, it's interesting. A lot of athletes, because of the competition of the game, you know, you leave the game, you don't have the same competition. And you hear from some of those people who they go into the broadcast booth, and it's nice to be around the game, but you're not really competing. And some of them need to get that Jones, and it has to come in the business. You know, Fran Tarkenton talks about that. He's a very successful businessman. Yeah. Drew Bledsoe, I think, owns a winery. He's worth hundreds of millions of dollars. And a lot of these guys have gone off into different ventures. Now, granted, they might have a leg up. I mean, this is a business, a sports economics show. Yeah. A lot of these, they might have a leg up because of their name, but they still have to produce in the business.
Sure.
And I think, Vern, you're absolutely right. There could be a whole series of things that you do, especially in the Bay Area. And you know, the famous stories of the Golden State Warriors, Andre Iguodala, putting those meetings together with venture capitalists from the peninsula with some of the young players on the team to understand the opportunities you have when you play here in the Bay Area.
Draymond Green invested in a teeth whitening company, and that stock just went crazy. And he's worth millions upon millions. Tommy John became a vintner after his baseball playing days. He had a very successful winery up in the St. Helena area. Charles Woodson.
Roger Staubach, I think, became a developer, if I'm not mistaken. Very successful, and took Emmett under his wing.
Smith.
Ropes, yeah. So pretty cool. Hey, Ben Roethlisberger, he says he's willing to stay with the Steelers and do it for less money, but the Steelers may want to move on. Question, how long do you stick with a quarterback before trying to rebuild?
Boy, that's a tough one, isn't it? That's a really tough one because, you know, there's always the thought of loyalty. Yeah. You know, he's given his body to the team. You know, he was horrible injuries 2 seasons back now that he had to sit out. He came back, and they were good for most of the season. Near the end of the year, he starts to slow down. But Vern, I think those are the tough questions that every organization has to ask. How long do you stay with the guys who got you there and who won championships for you? Bill Walsh famously said, get rid of them 1 year sooner than 1 year later. And Bill Walsh was willing to move on the greatest quarterback of his era, Joe Montana. So that maybe that tells you
that he had Steve Young right behind him, you know?
Yeah, but he was smart enough to get Steve Young, right?
Let's be honest, you know, Ben Roethlisberger just doesn't have what it takes to be a better quarterback than Pat Mahomes, you know, right now. I mean, you look at who his competition is. He's not up and coming like Josh Allen. You know, he doesn't have the weapons that that you have over in Baltimore. I mean, you know, there's just not a lot for and the Steelers franchise continues to sort of deteriorate. They haven't really recovered from Brown leaving and Le'Veon Bell getting out of.
Here's an idea: turn him into a fullback because he's what 6'3" or 6'5".
He's a tree, 6'6". Yeah, and here's a couple of bottom lines here. You open up the Steeler ledger, you go all the way to the right column, you see that $40 million hit on their cap. But I mean, Roethlisberger, as great as he is, Hines Ward, Lynn Swann, they're not walking through that door. He's got to have weapons, he's got to have somebody to throw to, and Roethlisberger doesn't play defense either, which has been like the staple of the Steelers since like forever.
Yeah.
Yep, that's true.
They got some decisions to make.
Let me ask you this. If they cut him loose and you're the 49ers, do you pick up the phone and say, hey, is that an upgrade for the 49ers for 1 year?
I don't think so because he's not mobile. And in that Shanahan offense, you got to be able to move and sometimes create off the dribble when things go wrong.
That's true.
Jim, are you a Garoppolo fan, or do you think they should get rid of him?
I'm not anti Jimmy Garoppolo, but I think if you can upgrade, you do. I'm fine with going to war with him next year. I mean, listen, we know the history. He's either been injured or he's gotten you to the Super Bowl. I mean, that's a pretty wide extreme.
Yeah.
Right. So you hope that he stays healthy. And when he does, you hope he can play well. If you're convinced he's your guy, great. But you better come to camp with a better idea for your backup, because history tells us, for the most part, Garoppolo doesn't play 16 games. You're going to need a better backup than you currently have. And I think that's where they're going to have to spend their money. If they go to camp with Jimmy Garoppolo, I'm not going to hang my head. I don't think that's horrible. There are worse options than that.
Their backups? You don't think their backups are got?
No, I don't think C.J. Beathard. Listen, they're fine young human beings. Nick Mullins and C.J. Beathard are fine. But we've seen that if you ask them to play extended time, you're not going to compete at the same level. And the rest of this roster was ready to compete last year. If you would have had Ryan Fitzpatrick as your backup, you might have been able to stay in it a little bit longer. And you never know what happens once you get to the playoffs. I think we've seen enough to know that Beathard and Mullins aren't going to be the answers.
Look at all the teams that succeeded in the playoffs, okay? You look at Pat Mahomes, 16 games. Tom Brady, 16 games. Drew Brees, 16 games. Aaron Rodgers, 16 games. Josh Allen, 16 games. So, like, you pretty much have to have a quarterback that plays all 16 games. You can't count on if you go 3 or 4 games in the season with your backup or into the playoffs with your backup. The only one that was able to pull that off was Washington, and they didn't win in their first round.
No, they didn't.
So, and every one of those guys that you mentioned, Mr. Jackman, they all had a solid offensive line to protect them.
That's
amazing. Or they were able to run around and not get hit.
Is Nick Bosa coming back?
Yes.
Okay.
You know what? I talked to Jennifer Lee Chan, who works for NBC Sports Bay Area, covers the 49ers, and over the weekend, and she was the first one to bring up that he's not like he's behind in his rehab, but don't be surprised if he's not ready week 1. It's a pretty serious injury he's had on a pretty large body that puts a lot of torque on that knee when he's trying to get to the quarterback. And she said, well, there's no, need for worry. It's not going to destroy his career. Just don't be surprised if he's not there in week 1, because you want to make sure he's 100% ready to go.
Gotcha. Hey, guys, second trivia question. Cutting to a break here. Which country was Steve Nash born in? All right.
Okay.
You have nice.
I got you. I got that one.
You got that one? Okay. Email Edward@sports.
And I have a story about him.
Oh, man, that's not fair. You're not supposed to have a story about him, too.
Well, I just
know the answer. Don't know the answer. All right. That's our trivia question is, what country was Steve Nash born in? All right. Stay with us. Sports Econ 101 is going to be back. Don't touch that dial. Welcome back to Sports Econ 101. I'm Edward Brown, along with Vern Glenn, Russell Jackman, our special guest, Jim Kozimer. And here's our second trivia question. Which country was Steve Nash born in? Hold on, Vern. You know that you know the answer. Russell,
I'm holding back. Go ahead.
Okay. Russell, what's the answer?
You're from the Great White North.
Yeah.
From Canada.
No.
Oh, I think he's from Canada.
No, I think he's like he lived there. So it's sort of a trick question, but it's not really a trick question because.
Good job, Edward. That's solid work.
You like that? Okay, so who else? Jim, do you know the answer?
Was he born in South Africa?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh.
You knew that, right?
But he does identify as Canadian.
As Canadian.
He moved to Canada. He and his family moved to Canada, and he claims Canada as his country. Fun fact, my wife and 3 daughters are Canadian.
Wow. Where are they from in Canada?
My wife was born in Edmonton, and since she was born there, her children just naturally become Canadian citizens. So she could actually take them over the border to Canada, and I can't get my hands on them. So,
and wait a minute, give us the other fun fact that your family bought Steve Nash's house.
Yeah.
All this Canadian stuff, right?
I know.
Vern, what's your story about Steve?
When he was at Santa Clara, because he wasn't very highly recruited coming out of high school, so he takes a scholarship at Santa Clara. Had never even heard of the university before he even got there. But we had him on a show called Sports Final when I was at another station,
Sure.
KRON. And when we have a guest, you get a limousine and you get dinner at the House of Prime Rib. And for those who don't know, outside of the Bay Area, a very old San Franciscan schwanky restaurant. So
Best piece of meat you can get in the Bay Area.
it outside of the tenderloin, sure. Anyway, that's an old joke. But anyway,
Tenderloin is not a good place. Go ahead.
So the House of Prime Rib is about 5-6 blocks from KRON at the time, and we taped the show at 8:30. So it gets to be about 8 o'clock, and Nash is outside of the House of Prime Rib waiting for the town car to pick him up. And because he didn't want to be late, he ran from the House of Prime Rib, ran 6 blocks to KRON because he did not want to be late.
I love that. And by the way, Jim, you're a special guest today, and we would have sent a limousine for you, but
Thank you.
You're at your house, I assume. So a little Zoom meeting there.
That's a good
internet paid by Sports Econ 101.
Very good. I like that.
That's a great story, though. That also tells you, Vern. I mean, and you've been in the business. We've both been in the business, but you were here and doing it at a time when it was a big deal.
Yeah.
A big deal. And to be on that show as a guest was a massive thing. And that's why you sent the limo and you got them the dinner and you get big guests on that show. It was amazing the way things.
If you think about it, Jim, that was at a time where there really wasn't any internet. I mean, if you wanted to get your news, you had to watch television. You had to watch us.
Yep.
So it was a big deal back in those days.
Hey guys, two quick things I wanted to bring up. Classy Carson Wentz. The reason I say classy is his number 11 uniform is already worn by a Colts player, and he just basically was cool. But he asked, the player says, "Hey, no, I'd like to keep my number," and he says he's cool with it, getting a different one. And what's the big deal about these guys who are a little bit of prima donnas who kind of come and it's like, no, I want that number,
Well, it's not so much being a prima donna, and Jim, go ahead and weigh in on this. But usually, it's the unwritten rule: if a veteran joins another team, then that veteran gets that number. Now, normally, if somebody else on the team has that number, there's some kind of compensation going on to get it. Yeah, but there are occasions where what happened in the case of Wentz happened with the number.
You know what? A number's a number. I mean, people know my number 11, over here, but they'll know me for a different number.
Means more jersey sales.
Yeah, that's right, exactly. Hey,
that's on one side, but Edward, on the other side, for some players, their number is also their brand. TB12, Tom Brady wearing number 12 is going to happen no matter where he goes. And, so it can be important for some people. You're right.
Chris Paul, number 3,
There you go. CP3. All these guys are going to – if they use it as part of their branding, and that's what we all learn about today, is it has to do with branding and has to do with your particular personal brand as much, if not more, than the organization's brand that you have. And so it might be worth $50,000 or a brand new car for a second-year player to give that number up.
Yeah, that's a very good point, especially when it's like, TB12 or C3PO type thing. At number 11, Carson Wentz, it doesn't – there's nothing really specifically branded there per se.
I don't know if Wentz has tried to brand that number and make it mean something for him. Some guys, like Vern said, are just superstitious, but it could cost you some. Heck, if I was a second-year guy who was a 5th-round draft pick and I was wearing a guy's number and he wanted to wear it, you give me $50K, you buy me a brand new truck.
Exactly.
All of a sudden, I think we can. You know what? I'm okay wearing 85 instead of 84.
Yeah, I'll give you any number you want.
Yeah,
and then there's also the occasion where, say in the case of the 49ers, number 12 was retired, worn by John Brody.
Yes.
But when Trent Dilfer was with the 49ers for a cup of coffee. Now, granted, Trent Dilfer is John Brody's son-in-law. He got permission to wear that number. So
that's the whole thing. You gotta, who do I have to marry to get in order to get my number?
And I'm sure if TB12 had joined the 49ers, he would have worn that number,
Oh,
and
yeah.
it would have been with the blessing.
Or he could have been like Doug Flutie and going around and going, I'm number 2, I'm number 2. You know,
There you go.
like that. And then Arkansas, we were talking about this in the first segment. Arkansas's latest state to try to pass a bill that would ban transgender athletes from competing in girls' sports. We've talked about this once before, just it's kind of rearing its ugly head again. My personal opinion is, again, since there are genetic differences, I don't care what kind of operation you get. If you were a man at birth, you're still a man. Just like in the Olympics, there was this woman who had naturally a little bit too much, we'll call it too much testosterone, but that was just a complete natural thing. There was no drugs, no weirdness going on. And originally, the Olympic committee was going to force this woman to take estrogen to get rid of some of that testosterone because she had a competitive advantage. And I said, that is the most ridiculous thing I ever heard. That means I get to go to Kevin Durant and say, you got to play on your knees because naturally you just happen to be too tall. And that's not competitive with me, right? Well, what are your feelings on this, guys?
Well, this actually happened in the case of Mission College in Santa Clara, the Saints, a smaller school, and they had a transgender on the team. She was Robert Ludwig, who served in the Navy in the 1980s. And then when he identified as a woman, he had an operation, took the estrogen, and became a woman, Gabrielle Ludwig, and joined the Mission basketball team. It was a court order. Had to go through a whole big, they did a whole story on this. And she was allowed to play, all 6'6" of her. So it was controversial, but it was done. But again, this is California, not Arkansas.
Yeah, and also, how many transgender athletes are there? I mean, I think too many times we try to shift around the entire culture because, well, this person has one green eye and one blue eye, so now let's shift everything over, to that. To me, it really is going to ruin women's sports. Not everyone, because not every woman, man who becomes a woman is going to suddenly be in let's say the boxing ring or something. But that actually could be next. There's definitely some sports that probably you won't have an issue with because there's just not going to be that crossover. But there are some women who are going to lose their college scholarships.
Well, that's an excellent point. That's the biggest point right there, Edward. And Vern's story, I think that's a great story to tell as part of the narrative. And the other part is there have been some families of young women who compete at the high school level in track and field, and they typically would have finished first, second, third, or fourth, at which point they were being recruited. Well, when there were a couple of transgender athletes who came to compete in the same competitions and they won first and second, pushing the third and fourth person to fourth and fifth or fifth and sixth, the next thing you know, they're not being recruited. So their parents said, hey, it's being unfair to our daughters because they're not being recruited in the same light. So there are two very different sides to this narrative, and it's a tough answer. It's a tough answer for everybody.
What is considered transgender? Does that mean you literally have to go through the full-on operation? Because I know of a woman who has chosen to, if you looked at her, she looks like a man. She had her breasts removed, but she did not have the operation down below. So she would still look like a woman down below. Is that, but she's taking hormones, male hormones, and she can actually grow a beard and all that. So again, by all circumstances looking at her, except for her hands, an Adam's apple, she looks like, or lack thereof, she looks like a man.
So, gentlemen, I'm sorry. I have to go right now. We got started a little late, so I have another meeting. I got a notice for that I have to leave. I really appreciated talking to you, Jim, and hopefully you'll be a guest on the show again soon.
I do it again anytime, guys. This is a lot of fun.
Thank you.
So Russell,
I'll see you guys next week.
We're going to say goodbye to you, and we'll let you know how this turned out.
Good job with trivia.
But guys, what do you think about what are the rules with regard to, you can't just kind of like be a guy and just say, well, today I feel like I'm a woman, so I'm going to go ahead and compete on the women's basketball team. I mean,
in my opinion, I think a transgender means you full on have changed the plumbing.
Okay.
And have gone from one to the other. That's just my thing. But it raises another issue. There is a world-ranked track and field star, I believe a middle distance runner, maybe one of, if not the best at her level. But for whatever reason, she was born with too much testosterone.
Yeah.
I mean, she's a woman, but for whatever reason, she has an unusual amount of testosterone.
Well, isn't that the one I brought up? Isn't that the story I brought up? She's track and field, and she has too much testosterone, and so they were going to force her.
Yeah, maybe that's what. But she has to be tested every world event just to show her levels of testosterone.
I don't mind the idea of, hey, we got to test you to make
acceptable levels.
Yeah, test you to make sure that you're not taking drugs or whatever, and I mean that part's okay. But I just think it's just so unfair for these women who suddenly, I mean, their whole sport could potentially be changed. Like you said, they lose the scholarships coming out of high school to college, or potentially college going on. I mean, it's gonna get messy. Hey guys, we're gonna go to our last commercial break here. Which player did the Los Angeles Lakers give up for Kobe Bryant? That's okay. Question, all right?
Okay.
Email Edward at sportsecon101.com. I think Russell would have known this question, and I'm sure you guys do know the question. Which player did the Los Angeles Lakers give up for Kobe Bryant? Stay with us. Sports Econ 101. We'll be right back with some closing comments. Welcome back to Sports Econ 101. Last time for today, I'm Edward Brown, your host, along with Vern Glenn. Russell Jackman had to hamstray, and our special guest, Jim Kozimer. Last trivia question. Which player did the Los Angeles Lakers give up for Kobe Bryant?
Josie?
I will go with Vlade Divac.
That is correct. Holy smokes, man. You got 2 out of 3.
I know, and I can't believe I didn't get the Pistons one, although we should have gotten that one. Fun fact, I've been to Vlade Divac's wife's nightclub in Sacramento.
Really?
Yes.
Well, now.
They're on opening night. Yes.
You have a lot of those Sacramento ties, don't you?
Yes, exactly.
Isn't Vlade famous for the razor commercial where he says, "No irritation"?
He's famous for smoking at halftime. He might be the last athlete to step out and have a dart between the first and second half.
Oh, man.
What was that one? What is about the razor?
He did a commercial, did a razor commercial, and to prove that the razor worked and that you weren't getting any razor burns, he said no irritation. But the way he said it was very it was very funny.
All right, guys.
He would shave in the morning, and by tip-off, it would be, full stubble. I mean, he had himself.
Hey, before you get to your thoughts for the day,
yes,
I got one Jim Kozimer memory.
Okay,
this was like almost 9 years ago. I'm doing my very last live hit for KRON before jumping to Channel 5. We're at the Olympic Club, so I'm signing off, and to my left, in the then Comcast Sports Bay Area tent, Jim Kozimer, writing his notes, getting ready for the post-round show.
I love it. Okay, you guys ready?
I remember that.
Here's our puns for the day. Will glass coffins be a success? Remains to be seen. And I lost my job at the bank on my very first day. A woman asked me to check her balance, so I pushed her over.
That's a great dad joke. That's awesome.
And I got over my addiction to chocolate, marshmallows, and nuts. I won't lie. It was a rocky road. All right. Next week, the Sports Econ 101. We'll be discussing sports topics from a business perspective and asking more sports trivia questions. Thanks for listening. On behalf of our team, I'm your host, Edward Brown. We'll see you next week.
Good night, America.
So long.